All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. And for those that are not online yet, they'll just probably miss the video. So I appreciate everybody hanging with us while we changed our schedule here. We were actually the whole leadership team was going to be online here today, and we were going to just have kind of a great Zoom chat with everybody, and we all wanted to hear from you and what your thoughts were or takeaways from anyone that were able to, go through the GLS and listen to the speakers. I know I still have a few I have to listen to and get that finalized, but we wanted to just kind of, share with everybody our takeaways from the different speakers and the event. Obviously, it was different this year because usually the event is held live, and so the camaraderie of people being there and things like that, you kind of miss that aspect. I think that's the one thing I hate about these Zoom meetings and this kind of stuff. I miss the interaction with people. I miss that networking that when you're on a break in between sessions, you've got people that you're chatting with, and you just meet from people from all different areas. And so that's kind of the downside of the world that we're living in right now, that I know eventually we'll get back to normal, but yeah, I think I'm not a fan of doing everything by Zoom, because I just feel like we're missing out in so much of that personal interaction. So I don't know if you guys all feel the same way. It's great for time, and you can log in from anywhere, you can work from home, you can do all this stuff, and that's great. And there's something to be said for that. But at the end of the day, I think that, we're all human beings and we like the human interaction. And at some point in time, you want to include that into some of the stuff you're doing. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. I miss it. So with that, I am going to, so when we had to switch gears, I laughed because yesterday, all of a sudden I was like, well, I don't have any other class planned right now, because I thought we were doing the follow-up on the GLS speakers and things like that. So that's fine. What came to my mind though was that you guys we're all in the same boat right now. We've all got buyers that you cannot find a home for. You're throwing your buyers to the wolves with these multiple offer situations and escalation clauses and everything. So, I just thought, okay, let's kind of walk through kind of what's happening right now with the market, maybe some better ways that we can work with buyers and sellers and try and help maybe your offer get accepted over others. I know there's, a lot of people use a lot of different techniques out there, but let's just brainstorm it, and I'll give you guys all a chance to ask questions, talk. Let's just, maybe we can come up with some great ideas to help everybody move forward with these multiple offers and getting your buyers into homes. So with that, first of all, I'm going to play this video. I know a lot of people over the years have followed Mike Ferry. He's been a huge speaker that Century 21 Corporate has had at several events, and is kind of one of our preferred speaker vendors, along with Jared James. But I don't know if y'all know, Tom Ferry is Mike's son, who started his own motivational speaking for real estate companies. And so he always has, I think, some different ideas, and I like to listen to both, because I like to, listen to Jared James and Mike Ferry and Tom Ferry and kind of a whole. Did you need me?
I'm just going on the media phone.
Okay, thank you. So anyhow, here's the video on this, and then let's brainstorm.
Today, we're talking about how do you position your buyer to get their offer accepted. Hey, welcome back to the Tom Ferry Show. So let's talk about it. What's your strategy today to get your offer accepted when you're in a multiple offer situation? What do you do? What's your approach? How many, if you will, arrows in the quiver do you have to make sure that your offer stands out, looks clean, and ultimately gets the yes? Here's what I wrote down. A couple things. Obviously, we all know number one is to reach out to the selling agent. Reach out to the listing agent. And you're going to say, Tom, they're busy. They're not responding. They got 37 offers. It's a crazy home. It's going to sell very quickly, yada, yada, yada. Here's my response. You have this phone. Hey Tristan, Tom Ferry, I just wanted to reach out about your property on 1234 Banana Street. My buyer is fully qualified, ready to close, can close immediately. And she asked me this question. what's important to the seller? Like, is there something we could do for the seller that would make this deal a no-brainer? If you could let me know, I would totally appreciate it. Now, guess what? They may not respond to that, but at least you asked the question, what's important to the seller? That's the key. Now, from there, obviously, having a nice letter written about the buyer. Are they a couple? Are they single? Do they have a puppy? Whatever it is, to add some of that emotion, right? To bring that sort of right brain mentality to the seller who's looking at all of these offers and saying, well, price, 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 price. Oh, but that's just like us when we bought this house, right? Create that emotional experience with a photo. How about a video from the family or the individual to try and warm up their heart a little bit? And again, separate your offer from the competition. Now, at the end of the day, it's all about the net to the seller. If you're writing clean offers and you're thinking to myself, how can I make this a no-brainer? The agent's gonna love it. The seller has to love it. Maybe, just maybe, by offering some unique benefits to the seller, maybe it isn't just highest price. You've seen it before, a little bit off the highest price, but everything about the offer and the benefits to the seller were on point, and you get the deal. So I'm gonna give you a few. Remember, state by state, country by country, province by province, you gotta pay attention to all your local rules, obviously, but here's a few. You ready? What if, for example, you offer to pay the seller's taxes? Right, that's a good one. What if you offered the seller free rent back so they now can close, get the cash, and go buy their next house? That's a compelling offer. I wrote down, what if you offered to cover their moving costs, right? Paying their title fees. I wrote down, like, there's a bunch of things you can do. The thing you gotta be mindful of, is, list out every possible thing that's a benefit to the seller that doesn't increase the price so you can get the deal closed and funded. Does that make sense? Now, hopefully your mind's now saying, yeah, you're right. It's not just price. I got to think about the seller. What else can we do? How do we make it a benefit for them? The last one is about positioning with your buyer. Whether it's on their initial offer and or it's in the counter situation, if you're lucky enough to be in that situation, it's called the ladder strategy. And what we're trying to do is ladder up on price your buyer to find out what is the highest they're willing to go to not lose the house. So I'm talking to Tristan and Steph. Tristan's behind the camera, and I say, okay, Tristan, you guys offered $499. They came back at $510. Are you willing to lose this house for $510,000? Well, gosh, I don't know, right? They're going to wrestle with it, and they say, okay, we're in. Before you just say, okay, that's it, let's go, I say, okay, but let me ask you this, Tristan, what if they counter back at $515? Are you guys willing to lose this house at $515? Are you guys willing to lose this house at $520? Are you willing to lose this house at $525? Oh gosh, Tom, the payment, this, that, our emotional state. Okay, you know what you're going to discover? Everybody has that highest possible price they'll go to. And in this uber competitive environment, we want to make sure that your buyer understands, hey, you might have to push the envelope on price, and the only way we can get them there is baby steps. So think about it. If you're talking about a $2 million property, you're probably not talking $5,000 and $10,000 increments. If you're talking about a $175,000 property, maybe you're only talking about $2,000 or $1,000 or $2,500. But laddering up your buyer mentally to say, are you willing to lose the property at this price? How about this price? How about this price? To find out what you can do to go back to the selling agent and say, we know we can do it here. Let's close. So, in summary, this is one of the biggest challenges we hear all day long on the streets, in our Facebook pages, on coaching sessions. My hope is now you're thinking just a little bit differently and a little more strategically to help your buyers ultimately win more deals. Let me know what you think. And by the way, what else are you doing in your town? What else are you throwing in, right? Put it in the comments on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or wherever you are, and let's help everybody win at this game. All right, we'll see you soon. Remember, always your strategy matters, and now more than ever, how you write your offers is what absolutely rules.
What'd you guys think of that?
Well, I'm coached by Tom Ferry, so I knew those. I used
Oh.
the ladder strategy last week, and it worked. I've done the videos. I've just gone right outside in front of the house and just recorded my my couple, but we didn't get it. The one thing I didn't do was
Are you having
the
trouble?
moving expenses or the taxes. That's kind of interesting
Very interesting.
because you're so afraid of it not, the sellers are so afraid
There
it's
might
not
have
going
gotten
to
some
break.
water in there. I think that there's some stuff right by my bed on that little table.
Somebody needs to be muted.
And I would just encourage you to take a couple ibuprofen or something just to help with the pain. But
You
that
can
stuff, I mean,
go ahead and
honestly, it's
continue,
alcohol,
Nancy.
It dries it up.
I
There might
can't.
be some water in there that's making it hurt. So it
I
kinda
lost my train of thought. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I hear somebody's in the background and I'm not quite sure who needs to mute, but I can hear somebody in the background. So Nancy, I did not know that you were coached by Tom Ferry. I think he's got some great stuff. I usually listen, every morning I get kind of an update from Mike Ferry and I get the emails and stuff from Tom Ferry. And of course, we've got a couple people in here that follow Jared James regularly. And I think that it's really cool because the combination of them all really gives you
I am making some dinner tonight about 5:30.
great.
I think it's Amy.
Hey, Amy.
That sound all right? I know you don't
Amy?
really like the sauce, but.
Hey, Amy, can we have you mute yourself? All right, does that help? Okay, so I think it's great. So anybody that is not following these people, seek them out. I know they got some great stuff on YouTube. You can go back and watch all their, older stuff. And you can sign up to get their emails and whatnot. So I think that they all give some great stuff. So I love that. To me, the new one was this ladder effect. So let's start with a couple of the first things he said. Obviously, hopefully you're all doing this. When you're getting ready to write an offer after you've shown a home and you've got a buyer that wants to write an offer on the home, I hope that you're reaching out to the seller, the listing agent. And I encourage you to do that verbally, not just send them a text or an email that says, hey, do you got anything else going on? And we're going to write an offer. In this day and age, with the way things are happening, you need to pick up the phone, make the phone call and say, just like he said, hey, my people are, we're ready to write an offer. I want to let you know that they are pre-approved. They're pre-approved with, and then tell them who they're pre-approved with. And to piggyback on that, if you're working with a buyer for the first time now, they pick up the phone, maybe you got them through one of your, lead router systems or whatever, and you've never met this buyer before. Obviously, you want to make sure they're pre-approved with a lender. And we have a lot of these, lenders that are online, and sometimes that doesn't give a seller, warm, fuzzy feeling. And so I would encourage you, if you picked up one of these buyers and you've got somebody, and I'm going to be honest, we had, my niece and nephew had listed their home a few weeks back, and I knew we were going to get multiple offers like instantly. And one of the offers we got, two things. The agent wrote it for way more than I knew and she knew it would appraise at. The people had to get financing, and she wrote it for let's see here, list price, it was over $30,000 over the list price is what the offer was, and I knew it wasn't going to appraise for that. The financing terms, she did a terrible job filling out the purchase agreement because she put that they're getting financing. She didn't put what kind of financing. I didn't know whether they were a conventional buyer, whatever, minimal down. So I knew that, the buyer was basically, she wrote the offer for the whole amount that they were approved for, hoping that they could get it accepted. But she did a terrible job writing the offer. She didn't fill in certain blanks. And then to top it off, the lender, the pre-approval letter that came in was an online lender. And so, we instantly had misgivings about this offer. Yeah, the price was great, but, I had to, you look at your seller and you say, here's what she's doing. She's basically throwing it, all in there and saying, you know what, we want to be the one that gets accepted, and we'll deal with the appraised price, and you guys are going to have to come down later in the game. So we already knew that. Well, right after that, obviously, we got a great cash offer, and, you know, cash is king, and, you know, that one went out. But had we not gotten that cash offer, when I reached out and called this agent back to tell her offer didn't get accepted, she was floored, because she knew she wrote it for $35,000 over the list price. And she's like, well, what do you mean? You know, we had been the highest. And I said, okay, two things. You might have been the highest, but you and I both know it wasn't going to price for that. So I said, I already know what you were doing. You were like, that was the most she was pre-approved for. You knew the appraisal was going to bring it back down and would have to renegotiate. And, you know, so I already understand that. But I said, top it off. You have, you know, an online lender. We would have, my buyers and we would have felt a lot more comfortable if you had a local lender that I could chat with and, you know, whatever. So that was the second thing. And the third thing, you did a terrible job filling out your purchase agreement. You left so many things blank, you know, I had to guess. And so, you know, lesson learned to her, because if you're gonna write an offer right now, you better have it ready to go, and you better have all your ducks in a row and have everything there. So, you know, word to the wise, if you've got a buyer right now that you're working with that is using, you know, a lender that you and I both know that, you know, a listing agent is not going to feel comfortable about, then chat with your buyer about that and say, using this lender may hurt you with getting your offer accepted. You can use this lender, but let's show them you've got 2 pre-approvals, and go ahead and get pre-approved by a local lender as well. And that way we know that you are qualified to buy this home. So does anybody have anything they want to interject on that before we move on to the next point?
I always call and ask what, like, especially if it says negotiable, what is the perfect time that they, you know, how many days would be the best in the interest of the seller? I always ask that.
Yep, very important. Because as he said, you know, maybe it's just a simple thing of allowing the seller more time to move out or stay in the home. Some of you are new and probably haven't heard this story. I use it a lot, unfortunately, and my stories get old, I'm sure. But, you know, we had an offer, and this was, the market wasn't as hot as it is now, but we had a multiple offer situation, and the one buyer that won out wrote it for less money, but they allowed our seller, they were elderly people that had a huge pole barn full of antiques, and the home was full of antiques, and they needed time to have some auctions and, you know, to get rid of this stuff. And they were also in the process of building a new home. The buyers came along and knew this. The buyers were living with their parents, so they didn't have to worry about rent and things like that. So guess what? Their offer won because they wrote it for less money than the other offer, but they allowed our sellers to stay in the home rent-free for 4 months. So obviously that won out over anything else, because that was the most important thing to those sellers right then and there, was giving them time to get their antiques sold and taken care of and get their home built, because they were a little bit older. They really didn't want to move twice if they didn't have to. And it worked out beautifully. And they've remained friends to this day. So sometimes there are good stories like that. So yeah, you know, he's exactly right. And again, you know, these things, if you pick up the phone and have that verbal conversation with the listing agent, where are you people moving? Are they moving out of state? Are they building a home? Because, you know, we can be flexible. We want a house, and we're willing to even have to pay a little bit more rent to stay in our apartment for another month to get this house. I mean, that's the conversation you need to have with your buyer when you first start working with them. You know what? You may not be able to work this out with the time your apartment lease is up and, you know, we can close, because we're going to try and fight to get an offer accepted. We may have to give the seller a little bit more time. Are you prepared to pay another month rent, or, you know, even a higher rent for that additional month? Is your apartment okay with that? So those are things that you can have that conversation with your buyer ahead of time and know what they can do. Anybody else got any other thoughts on that? I love the idea too. Obviously, the other thing that we've done this for years. Heck, you know, I kind of did it way back in the day, back in the 80s when my husband and I first bought our very first home. But it's let the seller know a little bit about who the buyer is and why this home is so important to them. Like he said, you know, do they have kids they want to raise there? You know, are they newlyweds and this is where they want to start, you know, their their marriage out and, you know, whatever. Do they have a puppy? You know, you can, when you're showing a home, you kind of get a feel for what these sellers are all about. You know, you know if they have kids, you know if they have pets, you know if they're, you know, the crazy cat lady that, you know, has cats all over the place. So you can kind of play on their emotions. And I don't mean play. I mean, that's a bad word because we're not trying to trick them, but we can, if there's a connection that buyer and the seller, when you're looking at the home, you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. They collect, you know, Peyton Manning stuff. So they're a huge Peyton Manning fan. Guess what? I'm a Peyton Manning fan. So, you know, the letter could be, you know, the way you have your rec room decorated with the Colts stuff, my stuff is going to fit in perfect. I have the same Colts jersey as you have. I have the same, you know, what commonality can you utilize in a letter to the seller about your buyer that plays on the heartstrings of the seller? And I like what he said too. I actually, even before I heard Tom Ferry's video, and he mentioned rather than writing a letter, what about doing a short little video with your buyers, and, you know, have your buyers in the picture holding their kids or holding their, you know, wearing their Peyton Manning jersey, whatever, and, you know, send it to the listing agent, say, would you please play this video to, you know, to let your seller know a little bit about my buyers when you present my offer. And, you know, we can't guarantee that they're going to do it. Hopefully they will, but those are things that can hopefully maybe connect those dots and make somebody feel, you know, I know when I sold my home, even though I'm in real estate, I wasn't selling a house, I'm selling a home that I raised my boys in, and we had graduation parties there. And so I had an emotional connection to the house. And, you know, in my mind, I wanted somebody to have that same thought frame, that they wanted to come in and, you know, see their kids raised through high school and have all the parties there for their kids and things like that. So we get emotional about it when, you know, the buyers and sellers become emotional. We treat of it as a transaction, but I think we need to play on those heartstrings. Anybody got other good stories about either the videos or the letters? I think the video is a great idea.
I've had several people write letters and we'll do a photo, include the photo in with it.
Oh,
I think
that's a
that's
great
only
idea.
not worked one time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, let me ask you this. When you guys write the letter, do you, since you've been in the home, you kind of got a feel for what that seller's all about? You kind of know if they have a pet. You kind of know if they have a football collection or a baseball collection, or, you know, maybe it's some of the ladies that have a little doll collection or something. But if there's something in that home that, you know, that the buyer connects with, you know, have you been able to utilize that in a letter to the seller?
Absolutely. The one time it was a Broncos room, and their little boy had on a Broncos sweatshirt when we were showing the home, and so he was like oohing and on over that. So they put that in the letter, and then the same letter. You know, I always tell my people to remove their personal photos off the walls, off the counters, whatever. Well, just so happened this lady was the gal's school teacher.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
she was her second grade teacher, and she wrote that in the letter, and the lady remembered her. The seller
Oh my
remembered the
goodness.
buyer. So
How fun is it? I think we've all been there. I've been in homes that I'm like, I think I know these people. I mean, you see a picture, you see some, like, wait a minute, I think I know these people. So, I mean, how cool is that to have a little bit of a connection that you can add in that? I mean, Patty, I think that's a great story, and that's exactly what he's talking about. You want to play on those heartstrings of that seller, because at the end of the day, most listing agents have already had the conversation with the seller. Look, you're going to get offers over what our list price is. It's going to happen. But at the end of the day, if somebody isn't offering you to pay a cash difference in appraised price versus purchase price, we're going to have to come back down to reality once the appraisal happens, right? So let's talk about the other issues with the offer. We've already ran the comps. We know where we're at here price-wise. It's great if we can get a little bit higher. That's awesome. The most I can push it. But at the end of the day, if I don't have any cash offers on the table, they're all going to be subject to financing and an appraisal. So let's talk about the other issues, right? I think that that's important, and that's important for us to tell our sellers that you're going to get offers that, you know, make your eyeballs pop out, and you're going to go, wow, somebody's willing to pay that for my house. Yes, they are, because they want to get their offer accepted. They know at the end of the day, the appraisal is going to happen, and that's when they can say, okay, now we're willing to pay the appraised price. And so we're all going to be in those shoes. So let's look at all the other issues with that. You know, I was just mentioning the fact of my niece and nephew's home kind of with that offer. You know, their eyes were about popping out of their head. They're like, but look at this offer. It's like $30,000 more than what we have it listed at. And, you know, I mean, I had already explained it when we listed it, what was going to happen. I had to remind them, I go, guys, let me show you the comps again. This is what the appraiser is going to be looking at. So it doesn't matter that they wrote it for this. And I said, in fact, you could argue that the appraisal could come down even less. So, you know, you don't want to get 2-3 weeks into this and now we're renegotiating the price, right? So some of the other issues that he talked about that we can maybe make our offer stand out. Has anybody, rather than prorating taxes, has anybody written the offer to benefit the seller as far as taxes to benefit that net back to the seller? Has anybody used taxes as a great tool? Nobody? So that's something you can look at as well. I mean, you know, look at the taxes and rather than prorating them, maybe say, you know what, let's figure out how to make it, we want our net to the seller to be higher. We can't go any higher on our purchase price. So let's talk about the taxes and see how we can show bottom line net to the seller where he's going to net a little bit more because I wrote the taxes up a little bit differently. So that's an option, you know, that you might want to think about moving forward. Let's see, I made a couple notes here. I'm trying to figure out. Oh, so we already talked about the moving out date, that kind of thing, and the free rent back. So I think that's huge, finding out what the seller situation is and how important it is to them to be able to stay in the home, maybe rather than 3 to 5 days. You know, do they need more time? So if you've got a buyer and they can work with that to help get their offer accepted, make sure you talk about those things. These are conversations you should be having with your buyer when you start working with them. Because you're going to have to let them know, okay, you're ready to start looking for houses. So we are going to be going fast and furious here. I apologize, but you're going to have to make some quick decisions. And you may wake up in the next morning and get cold feet. I see it right now happening. I've been signing a lot of mutual releases. My feeling of what's happening is people are writing these offers quickly because you're showing your buyer a house that already has 4 offers on it, and the listing agent's calling you saying, I need your highest and best by 5 o'clock, and I've got 5 more showings happening today. You show the house, you see the stack of business cards there. So you have to prepare your buyer for what's going to happen. This isn't, you know, the time where they can think about it overnight. We're going to sleep about it, see if we're going to make an offer on it. They don't have time for that right now. You need to tell a buyer up front right now. When you show them a house, if it's something that they want to put it, they've got to get in there and write that offer. So definitely have those conversations with your buyer. Same thing with your seller. Tell your seller what's going to happen with the offers, that they're going to get these incredibly high offers. But at the end of the day, you have to think about what it's going to appraise for. And we're going to look at all aspects of the purchase agreements when they come in, and conversations ahead of time say. So I do like the ladder effect. And I know, Nancy, you said you've used this and it's worked for your benefit. Was that a new concept for most of you? Have any of you used that ladder effect, or how he talked about how that strategy plays out? So I think at the end of the day, his main point of that, and Nancy, since you are coached by him, if you want to interject here, but I think his main goal in that is you're going to have this conversation with your buyer. And here's what I would also do in that respect. I think that if you're looking at a $200,000 listing and you're playing out the numbers and trying to find out what your buyer, look, are you willing to lose the house at this price? Are you willing to lose the house at this price? Are you willing to lose the house at this price? What price are you just ready to walk away, and you will be fine if you don't get that home because you're not paying over that amount for it? Where are we at in that? But I think above and beyond that, it would behoove you to already have in your arsenal, sometimes buyers think that an additional $10,000 is going to make a huge payment difference. So I would say have your ducks in a row and be prepared to say, this is only going to increase your payment by this much. This is only going to increase your mortgage payment by this much. Are you willing to lose the list or lose out on buying this house at this price if your mortgage payment is only going to go up this amount? So does anybody run those numbers for their buyers so they can see that and they're ready to go with that? Because, you know, at the end of the day, sellers want to know what their bottom line, what they're going to walk away with at the closing, but buyers, they want to know how much they're writing a check out for every month. That's their number one. I want to know what my check, how much am I is coming out of my bank account every month for this house. So I think that if we have those numbers ahead of time, that should help, in my opinion.
I typically will give them a printout of anywhere between, depending on what their budget is. So I will usually go anywhere between $20,000 lower than what they're looking at, and usually about $30,000 more. That way they can see the difference in the breakdown of what the price is going to be.
Yeah. And Patty, isn't it kind of probably surprising to them to think, oh, I'm paying this much more for the house, but it's only costing me this much more every month?
I get that every time.
Yeah.
You know, especially if they go the $30,000 more than what they were actually looking for. At the end of the day, it's not very much at all. And I even had the one couple said, well, it looks like we're not going to be going to Saboya's one time a month.
Right. And you know, it's funny because you can actually get it down into that specific. If you've got a buyer that's a huge, you know, I'm not a Starbucks fan. I'm just not. But, you know, if you got somebody that's going to Starbucks once or twice a day, that, you know, do they know how much they spend per month at Starbucks? Because sometimes it's a matter of just tweaking their normal, you know, what they do. Hey, I guess in the morning I could make my coffee at home and I could just stop at Starbucks once in the afternoon rather than going there for morning and for afternoon. So maybe it's a matter of spelling that out. Like Patty said, these people are like, oh, okay, so we could do without Saboya's one time a month and make this work. And, you know, it's sometimes just the craziest, smallest things that people realize that's all it boils down to, getting the home of their dreams, giving up one Starbucks a morning. That's what it boils down to. Does anybody else use that technique? I think especially with first-time home buyers, you know, that's their biggest fear, that they're not going to be able to make that mortgage payment. So when you put it into those terms for them, it's pretty easy. And if you get to know your buyer, you can ask those questions. You know, how many times a day do you go to Starbucks? How many times a day do you know, how many times a week do you guys eat out? So here's some ways that you could probably make up that money and not even feel it. And you'll make your payment, not even realize it.
A lot of time, even with renters, they can't believe the difference. What they're paying in rent versus what they're going to be paying for a home. And that's going to include their taxes and their insurance. And most of the time, they're paying less.
Yeah,
so.
It's true. It's very true. So I just think, you know, as far as the offer goes, you know, we get hung up on, you know, my phone rings off the hook for people getting in multiple offer situations. And they're like, I've got 3 escalation clauses. I've got this, we've done highest and best. And at the end of the day, and this is probably more on the seller side, you know, you're sitting there dealing with all these offers that you've got in, and, you know, you're trying to weigh everything out. But at the end of the day, you need to, every offer is unique and different. So just because one offer is less money doesn't mean that might not be the best offer, and doesn't mean that because you have to, especially when you have an escalation clause, you got to counter it anyways, because that's the way that works. So, you know, you could take an offer that's even less than one of the highest escalation clauses, but let's say they have more of a down payment, so it's a stronger buyer. They're putting, you know, more than 20% down. Maybe these, you know, buyers are the ones that reached out to you and said, you know what, we can work with your moving situation. So tell us what you need. Maybe it's a buyer that wrote, you know, the letter or did a video and you connected with that. So at the end of the day, every offer is going to be unique. And I think that that's where we get hung up on that. So we need to sit down and go through every single offer and look at every single term in that offer. Here's another one that comes into play a lot. I know some people write these offers and they're asking for 15 to 20 days to do home inspections. And so what does that tell me with the seller? I'm dragging this thing out for up to 20 days and you may walk away at the end of the day. So that's kind of frustrating. I see that happen a lot where, you know, people are holding off on appraisals and they're dragging their feet, you know, they're getting down to the wire on the 15th day for home inspections and then utilizing the additional 5 days for further inspections. So now you're 20 days into it. You don't have the appraisal yet. and you got a buyer that's, you know, asking for the sun, the moon, and the stars, or just asking to get out of the deal because they don't like the home inspection. You've been off the market now for 20 plus days, 25 days. So it's frustrating. So I think, you know, another aspect of working with sellers and getting your offer accepted is shortening that time frame for home inspections. Now, yeah, you might not get the home inspector your buyer wants. You may, you know, you may have to make a lot of phone calls and try and connect with a different home inspector than you've used. But at the end of the day, that might be another avenue to help you get your offer inspected. You've got to, you know, if I'm the listing agent and I got multiple offers and I'm looking at a buyer coming along going, hey, I'm going to get my home inspection completed in 5 days, and I just want an additional 3 days if I need to do further inspections. So that's a buyer that's already getting their ducks in a row. They've probably already talked to inspectors. They've probably already know who they're using and what they're going to do, and they're ready to go. So now, as I'm representing the seller, I'm looking at this going, hey, you know what? They're not dragging their feet. They are not messing around here. They want to move forward on this. They want to move quick. They're going to go ahead and rush their inspections. We're going to get through all this with minimal time. So guess what? If something does come up in the home inspection that we can't work out, we've now only been off the market for about a week and we're ready to get it back on the market and go. Don't you think that would be appealing to a seller? Has anybody had any offers that have come through like that, where these people are like, you know what, we're not going to hold you up on inspections. We're going to get this done right away. So to me, if I'm representing a seller, I'm going to point that out. I think that's important. I've got one right now where somebody's extremely frustrated. They're 2 weeks away from closing, and the appraisal just came back, and the appraisal got cut, and the buyers don't want to negotiate. The sellers are willing to come down to the appraised price because what, they don't have to. Buyers don't have to take it. Purchase agreement says if it doesn't appraise, either party can walk or you can renegotiate. And the buyer is using this as a way to get out. We're 2 weeks away from closing. It's been off the market for a long time. Sellers are livid. Doesn't make the, I mean, you know, of course, the agent didn't do anything wrong, but who do they want to throw stones at? We're always the ones that, you know, get the blame. But it basically boiled down to the buyer was able to use the appraisal as a way to get out of the deal. So sometimes tightening up timeframes makes a huge difference. Has anybody had that experience? Did I put everybody to sleep? I must have put y'all to sleep. Does anybody else have any other unique ideas for getting your offer looked at or making your offer stand out if you're representing a buyer to a seller? No? Does anybody have any things with, you know, you've been on the listing side of it, maybe another buyer has come along and they've utilized some of these things and it has helped you with the seller of saying, you know what, we can add a look at this offer here. It might not be the highest. We know where it's going to appraise anyways. Look at these other terms. Has anybody had that on the flip side of it, where they've used any of these techniques?
Well, we recently had a sale in Auburn, and actually it was a cash buyer, and they asked for no appraisal and no inspection, and it was under list, and I thought there's no way they're going to get it. And the listing agent ended up calling me, and she said, I have 2 offers here. One is your cash offer. One is, you know, an over list price offer that's, I don't remember what kind of financing, but she said, would your buyer come up a little bit? So I called, got her up just a little bit closer to the list price, and, you know, we were able to make it happen, which it was, you know, one of the easiest deals ever because there was no inspection, no appraisal. I mean, it was just easy. It was kind of hard not to try to, you know, hard not to forget about it, which I tried not to do.
Oh, absolutely, because you don't have to deal with anything else. It just is a done deal. So, you know, in regards to that, my niece and nephew, the same thing. You know, we had the offer. They're looking at, their eyeballs are popping out of their head because they're like, wow, we can get, you know, about $35,000 more than we ever thought we could for this house. I'm like, guys, come back down to reality. I already talked about this. The appraiser is going to look at the same comps that we're looking at. It's not going to appraise for that. So take that off the table. So, you know, then we get the cash offer. Well, the cash offer was subject to an appraisal, right? So, you know, we're looking at that going, boy, we could still be stuck here because it's a cash offer over list price, but subject to an appraisal. So basically, kind of the same thing. We reached out to the listing agent, or I mean to the buyer's agent, and we just said, look, we have an offer for significantly more money than what you're offering. And yeah, we can play the game and wait and see what it's going to appraise out. Maybe it's going to appraise right around where we think. Maybe we'll get lucky and get some appraiser that just gives it, you know, 10 stars all over the map. But at the end of the day, you're cash, and obviously that means a lot to us. So, you know, I can cancel these other showings and we can move forward with your offer, but we need you to remove the appraisal clause, and you're just gonna, you know, this is the price it is. You can still do your home inspection and whatnot, but this is the price, and you're not getting it appraised. And her comment was, I don't think they'll go for that. They're coming in from out of town. They don't know anything about house values here. And I go, that's fine. Run comps for them, whatever you want to do, but just let me know, because we've got showings through the rest of the day here. And so she called me back and she said, you know what? She said, send it to us in writing. She said, we'll sign it and it's a done deal. So, you know, it's just a matter of saying, take that appraisal off. We know it's not going to appraise for that, but if people are willing to, you know, pay just a little bit more money than, you know, where they feel it was going to appraise at, we got a done deal. We can all move forward. And your people, you know, the buyers were from out of town and they had to get back on a plane the next morning and leave. So, you know, they didn't have to worry about, you know, having to stay longer or come back and do another house hunting trip, and it worked out. So I didn't think they were going to go for it, the no appraisal thing, but they did, and it worked out. So anybody else got anything else they want to add? So does anybody, yeah, thanks, Nancy. It did work out. And actually, I can't take credit for that. It was, I was on the phone with Jim and we were like, what are we going to do with these offers here? Because this, you know, even the cash deal, we didn't think was going to appraise for where the offer came in. And he said, just let them know, you know, we can get a done deal. We can get this signed and off the market right away, but they need to say no appraisal and we'll move forward. So that was Jim's great idea. So sometimes bouncing things off of other people, you know what, I think that's what we're all good at here. If you've got a situation going like this, you know, I mean, we got a great group of people here online. Bounce things off of them and just say, hey, have you ever had this situation? I'm not quite sure what to do on this, and what do you think about these 3 offers? And, you know, get some other input and some ideas, because I think that that's what makes all of us better. You know, not one of us is as smart as all of us together, right? So I love that idea too. Anybody else got anything else going on that they want to run past, or, you know, with the buyer situation, seller situation, or anything else? We got a few more minutes here, so if anybody wants to interject anything else, we can talk about it. No, I guess not. All right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, that was pretty much what I wanted to talk about today, was just try and help you guys get some offers accepted and look at some different avenues to do that and how we can all work together here. So keep me posted if you use any of these new ideas. That if you picked up one new thing today and you try it with a buyer, you try it with a seller, you know, give me some feedback and let me know how that worked out for you. Hopefully this appraisal thing will work out for you. As a new idea, if you're lucky enough to get a cash buyer, I should say. Anyway, I thank you guys all for joining. Let me know if you need anything else, and we will see you later. And don't forget, golf outing on the 18th. Have a great day, everybody.